Good day. Real-world programming for beginners, and in this session we are going to build an Android app, a simple calculator that can be deployed onto an Android device. So this session will be split across two videos. In the first video, we are going to define the app data. We are going to work on the user interface, and then we are going to connect the data, user interface, and the program logic together and test the app and make sure the app works correctly and we are happy with it. And then in the second video, we are going to take a look at the actual program logic to see how it worked, how the calculator worked, and how it was programmed. What we are looking at here is the actual website where the project is stored. So the link would be down below, and here is where you are going to be able to download everything that you need to do this app. Okay, so pleasantries aside, let's actually get into work now. So I will start up Android Studio and we'll wait for Mr. Android Studio to load. And while we are waiting on Android Studio, we can download the sample project. You'll get everything else with the sample project, right? So you don't need to download everything one by one. These links are for persons who probably want to read in their browsers like this. So if you click on the links, the information will open up in a browser tab. If you want everything in one package, download the sample project. So I'm going to download the sample project. Okay, so we have it here, archive simple calculator. Feel free to go ahead and extract this archive and right. So within the extracted file, there's a folder, simple calculator, and this contains all the information that we would need. And this is what we are interested in right now, simple calculator underscore student. So simple calculator underscore student, this is the project folder that we are going to be working with to do our calculator. So these three documents, we will be referring to them from time to time. I will load them in my browser. You can print them, view them however you see fit. So the first document, this document is a description of the actual project and what we are going to do. So I'm not going to spend any time on this. We'll just refer to this when on demand. So it gives directions and tips as to assist you in building your calculator. Design considerations for a simple calculator. Okay, so this document we will talk about in the second video. So we aren't going to be doing anything on this in this first video. And the last document is event handling. Anybody who wants to build the simple calculator to actually read this document on event handlers. So what we can do is, again, extract this simple calculator file. And in the extracted folder, there'll be a folder named simple calculator underscore student. And you could copy that, or you could go within simple calculator underscore student and actually extract. So you can copy or cut, whichever one suits you, the simple calculator file and deposit it into your Android Studio projects folder. So that's where I'm going now. And I have videos on this so I'm not going to spend any time on this. Right, so users, Android Studio projects, that's it. And we'll deposit the simple calculator here. And the first thing that we are going to do is that we are going to work on our app data. We are going to create the data that will be mapped to each one of those visual components. So let's take a look again. So we see our visual components here, and they all contain some sort of data. We are going to define our data in strings.xml. So when we are finished with the actual visual design, we can map the data values onto this visual design. I have given you all names to use, and again, the reason being for consistency. You can actually use your own names for class purposes where I would have to be assisting students. It's a lot easier if we have consistency and standardization, right? So for the 10 buttons, start at button 0 and go to button 9. The mathematical operators would be button add, minus, divide, and multiply. The enter button will be enter. The clear button would be clear. And the screen would be simply named screen. And the default values for them, for the buttons, the value would be correspond to the button name. So button 0 will have value 0, button 1 will have value 1, button 2 will have value 2, right down to button 9 with value 9. And similar, button add will have a plus sign, button minus, the minus sign, button divide, the forward slash, and button multiply, the asterisk. Button enter will have a value of enter, and button clear, I will simply put enter and clear for my values. And for screen, it will have a default value of 0. Let's be smart, and we are going to make 17 easy buttons real quick. And this is the XML definition that we are going to use, and what we are going to do is just reuse it 17 times and adjust it for each one of our different calculator buttons. Great, so that's our buttons there. So we can simply add 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll go right down this until we get to 9. And the values, so you will remember when we did XML, the value is what is between the start string tag and the end string tag, and it will correspond to the button name. Remember to use the actual values that I have given you. So we are going to be leaving the XML data definitions here and moving on to XML layout files. And the XML layout files are stored naturally under this layout folder here. So I created the XML layout file, so we can simply double click on it. And we get a blank canvas, blank design canvas from which we can work. And again, remember, you can work from design view, blueprints view, or you could work from the two at the same time, whichever one, whatever pleases you, right? So I'll close this piece here and I'll work with design view. Right, so I'll increase the size of my canvas so that we can work with it properly, and I'll bring up the right. So this is what we want, and the design view here is how we are going to do it. So we can click on our palette and from our palette we can begin dragging the different components here that we would need. So we're going to need a text view, as we said, for the calculator screen. So that's a text view there. And in class, I taught you guys that you need to constrain all your views so that Android has some mathematics to work with regards to understanding where on a device to actually render the component. So that's what the constraints does. So this is our screen here, and remember again, this is our design view. This is not your emulation. So this is strictly a design view. And we drag across a button, and we need 16 buttons. So we'll copy and paste this 16 times. And if you look to the left here at the component tree, you'll have seen the button was copied over and over in the component tree there. Okay, so we are not going to sit down and arrange all these calculator buttons and then constrain each one of them one by one. All right, so we are going to cheat, and we are going to use a custom layout. So under layouts, I'll select here table layout and drag in a table layout. So a table layout is a custom layout, and we'll drag our buttons into this table layout, make our work a lot easier. And with that, we can constrain so simply the layout alone after, because the actual buttons would be set within the table layout. So again, look to my left here in the component tree, and you'll see the table layout here, and you can expand it, and it comes with 4 rows by default. So from the component tree, you can begin dragging the buttons into the actual rows. Before dragging the buttons into the rows, it's important that we drag the correct buttons into the correct places, so that whatever visual guide you are using or whatever visual design that you desire, you get the correct design being implemented. So let me show you what I mean by that. What I need to do is, for example, notice we have a button 10 here. So I'll rename this button 0. And in the attribute section is where we do this. All right. I'll ask if we want to refactor, say yes. Right, so we have 0 to 9. So following our layout, I'd like to put 2 or 3 numbers to a row and 2 operators, right? So it doesn't matter, we'll work out something. So let's see how this goes. Button 1. Where is button 1? Okay, so button 1 is named button, so we want to change that ID as well. And call it button 1. Great. So from the component tree, you can select button 1 and drag button 1 into the, drag them from the component tree. So drag button 1 into table row here, followed by button 2, followed by button 3. Where's my button 3? And okay, so we just put one mathematical operator. I'll put clear. I will drop a clear button. Which button should we use for clear? We'll take button 11. So button 11 we'll rename to okay, so what I'm doing in the top right hand side here is giving every component a unique ID. Now Android Studio automatically gives components unique IDs, so you are seeing this in the component tree where it gives the buttons default names, layouts default names, etc. But I am changing them so that they are meaningful and that they correspond actually to this naming convention. Now this naming convention is something different. Here we were doing data definitions in strings.xml. Here we are working within Android Studio. But for clarity's sake, I would use the same names so that I am clear as to what a button does. Right, so I'll select the clear button and drag the clear button here as well. And that's it there. And we can do this for the 4 rows. So concluding the dragging of buttons onto our table layout. So I've reached button 9. And after button 9, I'll drag button enter. And in the 4th row, we'll put button 0. Sorry, so we'll move button enter from here and we'll put button enter in the 4th row, right? And what buttons do we have? Oh, okay, so we have minus, multiply, divide, add. Right, so I'm going to, before we place all the other buttons, I'm going now to map our data. Actually, we need to, right, just separate out these buttons here. Right, so let's map the data that we defined in strings.xml to each of these buttons. And in class, I showed you 3 ways to do it. So I'm going to show you the very easiest way. So you can select a button either from the component tree, which is actually very easy to select because with the table layout, sometimes you'll be clicking on the layout layout itself and not the individual buttons. So if you're having trouble, use the component tree. So select button 1, and you know it's button 1 when you look at the attribute ID on the right here. So every component that you click on, its attribute ID would show up here. So I'm on button 1, and under common attributes here we go to text, and I showed you guys that we can use the @ sign to pull up references to our data definitions in the strings.xml file. So what I just did was that I created a binding between the visual layout here and the definition in the strings.xml file here. So if I were to change this value here, let's say to a word yes, why yes, yes, when we go back in our design, notice it changed the yes. And this is why we want to separate our data into a separate file so that we can make changes very easily right here instead of making the change in the actual design. Right, so for button 2, we do the same thing, add, and simply select button 2, and the same for button 3. So I'm almost done. I would just like to mention one thing here. At times students select the second text option here with the tool icon. We're working with text, not text with the tooltip icon. So sometimes students try making the changes here and they don't get the results that they're looking for, and they become frustrated. All right, so we're almost done. This would be 0. This one would be clear. Button clear. This one would be enter. Enter. Right. Minus. So notice when I click on the button, I'm not sure what to map to these buttons here, but I can look at the ID that I defined and I know, okay, so this is minus. This one is multiply. Addition. And this is subtraction. No, division, sorry. Button divide. Great. So we have completed mapping our data to our actual buttons. Okay, so I'm making a little adjustment. I'll put my operators on this side here. So, one more divide. We'll go in table row 4. Great. And that's it for my calculator design. So unfortunately my emulator is not working properly on this PC. There's some driver issue, but I'll deploy it to a physical device so that you guys can actually see how it works. So that concludes the major part of the visual interface design. So what I'm going to do now is just a few aesthetic changes, and these aren't important immediately to design, but I'll do them for demonstration's sake because we would actually like to see the calculator being demonstrated and working. So let me bind my data value here as well to the screen. So at screen string screen, right? So first thing we want to work on is our screen. So notice we can't see our 0. We are supposed to see our 0 here. We can't because the font color is black. So on our attributes tab, we can actually manipulate a lot of attributes for our visual components. So I'll click on my screen and then I would like to adjust my font color. So let's see what we have here. Text color. Right. I want some nice color for my white is fine. Yeah, white is fine. White is fine. We'll go with white. Go with white. Right, so now we see our 0. And we would prefer a bigger 0, of course. So let's look for font size. A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, probably text size. All right, so don't forget to click your component that you want and then look for the attributes. It's 34. Yeah, 34 is good. And we also would like to move this to the right side of our screen. So let's look for, oh, I'm not seeing what I'm looking for here. I'm looking for text alignment. Anyhow, this is where knowing the code comes in well. So I'm going into split view. I'll close the attributes tab for now. And I actually know that I can write the code to do it. So I'm not sure why the coding wasn't there in the attributes pane, but we'll do it from in the code view. By the way, whatever you do in code view is automatically updated in the design view. Whatever you do in design view automatically is updated in the code view. They are not separate views, they are one and the same. This code is what generates this visual layout. So if you actually understand a bit of the XML code that goes into it, so I did not see the attribute for moving this to the right, but I know how to do it using XML. So I'm going to type it in XML and you'd actually get to see it changing in the design view. The required XML property is the Android gravity property, as well as Android text alignment property, I believe. Let's give it a try and see what happens. And one more thing that we could do is we could put a little padding between the 0 and this right border. And I am sure we should be able to do that from the design view alone. So let's look for padding properties. All right, so we have padding properties here. And that will be padding right. And I think Android uses DP. Yeah, that should work. Great. And if you want, you can actually do some work on your buttons as well. So I'll click on the plus button and you can adjust your button styles. So here we have, so I'll click on the button and then you have different styles for your buttons. And these you need to play around with these a bit, because there are sometimes little weird behaviors with these buttons. So right, so I'll change my button styles. This is, what is it? App Comcat borderless. Okay, borderless colored. Yeah. App Comcat borderless colored. Right. And we can do the same for our other buttons as well. Give them different styles. This is nice. That is nice as well. And similar to these here. I'll look for a different style. Let's use a brand new style. Widget Holo. Yeah, let's try this. Yeah, this looks nice. Widget Holo button. Great. So with our design completed, if we were to deploy this to our device, what would happen? And the sad answer is nothing, because we simply have data tied to our design, but we do not have the functionality yet. The functionality for this calculator is designed in these Java files here: logic, operand, operator, and simple calculator. So in the second video, I would actually go into how this was programmed and done, but let's complete this. We could get it working before the explanation, and we want to do that. So there's one thing that we need to do still, and that is to connect our visual design to this program here, this Java code. And why we want to do this is that we want, when you touch your buttons and click your operands, something happens. For example, if we said 15 plus 15, enter, we get 30 here. So that is the logic of this app, and it's within the code here. We'll discuss the code in the next class, but we are going to connect our visual design to this code in this class and deploy our app to our mobile device. So to connect to our code, we are going to use the event handlers, and that is described for you guys in this document here. It's in the package, so I'm not going to go too much into it. You have it there to read, but basically what it does is that I would have written code that when this app starts and is loaded, the code sits in a loop waiting, and every time you click on a button, it would evaluate the button and do the appropriate action depending on the button that is clicked. So that is an event. That's an example of event-driven type programming, and there's a lot of it in mobile application development. In fact, any development where there are graphical user interfaces, there would be a lot of event type programming. So we are going to connect to the event handlers that I had written. All right, so there's one last thing I need to do, and it's in your instructions. I need to give this screen a unique ID called calculator screen. All right, so that's it. And now let's connect our event handlers. So the instructions was pretty clear on what to do with respect to the event handlers. Again, so that instruction is under the event handler note. You look for this onClick method because that's what's going to happen. The buttons are going to be clicked. So there are different types of events and different types of event handlers. And we are interested in the onClick event. So whenever a button here is clicked, we want some program to run. And Android has pulled up the little subroutines or methods or functions, depending on your programming language. And these are written and we'll see them, but I'll just do the connections for now. We'll discuss how they work in the subsequent video. So on click, we want to attach this process button clicks to all of our numeric buttons as well as the mathematical operators. So let's do that for button 1, process clicks. So what happens is that whenever your user clicks a button in this app, this process button clicks would run. And if you don't want to see it, you could go into Simple Calculator. Yes, process button clicks, and this is the Java method that is called whenever a button is clicked, and this decides what to do when a button is clicked. So we'll get into this in the subsequent class, and what we will do now here is attach process button clicks to all our buttons except enter and clear. So button 2, process button clicks, 3, process button clicks plus button clicks 4. Right, so for enter, we would select enter pressed as the event handler. And for the clear button, we can select either reset calculator logic or reset screen. It doesn't matter really. Basically, reset calculator logic would clear the program memory as defined for this app. And if you use reset screen, it will just clear the actual screen. If you use reset calculator logic, it clears the screen as well as all operations that were existing. Reset screen will just clear the screen. So it depends on what you want, right? So I'll just use reset screen. Great. So our calculator is wired, it's connected, and it's ready for deployment. Okay, so I have fetched my Samsung J120M and it's connected. And again, if you are watching this and you don't know how to connect your device to Android Studio, the Android site actually has a description for it. I would leave a link down below with it. So we simply need to click this green triangle and push our app to our mobile device. Okay, resource linking failed. Okay, all right. Okay, so I believe I mentioned that the button styles are a bit iffy, and yes, I was forced to change my button styles. I got a message saying I had to use a borderless style. Right, so I changed my button style to borderless, and I have deployed it to my mobile device, and let's see how it looks. Going to This is our icon here, simple calculator. So it has been deployed onto the mobile device. The phone has been disconnected as well. So it's just okay. So that's it. And we see it looks very similar to our visual design. We have run a few tests and we can confirm that the calculator is working. So we will end on this, and in the second video I'll discuss how the calculator was actually programmed. So that's it for this video, and catch you soon in the second coming video. Take care, God bless, see you soon.